know I look terrible right now, but that's because I've just woken up and I want to get this video sorted. This is actually take 2 of me trying to film this look because I tried it yesterday, really didn't go well for me. I just did not like the way it turned out and I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So, I'm going to be filming a Halloween inspired look for you, which is kind of like a gory glam look is what I think I'm going to call it. And I just got super inspired by this on Pinterest. Basically it's like a Joker cutout smile, and I got really inspired by this as well on Pinterest. So I'm going to be doing something along those lines. I'm going to keep these photos up just for reference because I want to try and recreate it. The only 2 things that you're going to need, which are like kind of stage effect makeup, are some blood conjugated gel thing. I just picked this up on Amazon, and also you're going to need some liquid latex, which is basically just plastic stuff. And then also I picked up one of these little palettes, like a little cream palette. They do some very similar ones from Makeup Forever, I believe. But I thought I would just pick one up just on Amazon. They're really cheap and cheerful. So let's just get on into it. So this part of the video is going to be a voiceover because you're going to see it in 10 minutes, but in reality it actually took me like 2 hours, and you know I wanted to watch Netflix and listen to my music whilst doing this, otherwise I would have got so bored. So to start with anyway, I'm just doing my eyebrows with my Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Wiz, just as I normally would. And then I'm going to be taking my Urban Decay Naked Concealer in medium and just carve out my brows just as I normally would, just to give them some definition. And I'm going to be blending that exact same concealer down on my eyelid just as a base for my eyeshadow that I'm going to be putting on. Then I'm going to take my RCMA No Colour Powder just to set all that, just because that's exactly how I usually would. I'm not going to go too much into detail about this next part just because you can do it however you like, if I'm being honest. I'm just taking my Urban Decay Naked Palette 1 and my Morphe 350, and I'm literally just creating an eyeshadow look, which I do all the time. Like, when I don't know what dramatic eyeshadow look to do, this is what I will be doing. All this eyeshadow look is just blending really warm colours into the crease and some dark browns in the outer V. And then I take my Laura Mercier, it's like a colour stick, I have no idea what it's called, I'll try and link it below if I can remember what it is. And I just use this as a base just for Half Baked, which is literally my favourite gold colour ever. I don't think anything's ever going to compare to it. And it just looks so stunning. So now I'm just going to be creating a wing with my NYX Cosmetics liquid liner just to make this look glam, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be glam but gory. So now starting on the gory stuff. I'm taking liquid latex and one of those sponges, and what you want to do is take a sponge which you're not going to use and you want to throw out because it gets gross. Like, trust me, it gets grim. And I'm just lightly tapping the liquid latex all over my skin. What you'll want to do throughout this is just continually layer it over the top, so you want to make sure each layer that you put down before is quite thin, but also you want to make sure it dries. So you can either use a hairdryer or just do what I'm doing here. I kind of did a mixture of the both, but I didn't show my hairdryer in it just because I didn't. So here, layering again the liquid latex with the sponge. And what I'm also doing is taking tissue paper, but I'm ripping it in half just so you get a really thin layer of the tissue paper. And when I tried it before, I cut it and I cut the strips way too big. So here I'm ripping them and I'm putting down the liquid latex, and then I'm going to put the tissue paper over the top. And here I really should have waited for this to dry down and stick, because I went over the top here and it just didn't work. Like, it started lifting up. So I'd really recommend for you to wait for this bit to dry first before you start adding more of the liquid latex over the top. So here I'm just doing the exact same thing to the other side. What I found with this part is the liquid latex blends really well with your foundation, so it actually looks like skin, whereas the tissue paper, it makes it look more realistic, as if your skin will be peeling up. See, there's the bit where it started peeling and I should have waited for it to dry. But the tissue paper doesn't really colour match very well with your foundation or the skin. You can still see the white peeking through no matter how many layers you put on, because it will just look cakey if you put a million layers on. So what I recommend is just doing very thin strips, only the amount you want to be lifted up, looking as if your skin is cut. You don't want to put any that's going to be still stuck down because it won't just look like your skin. So here, it does take a long time, the process. You just have to keep blending over the top with the liquid latex and waiting for that to dry, because the more layers you put down, the more skin-like it will probably look. So here I'm just going to be fanning down the last layer to make sure it's dry, and this is the layer you want to make sure is really, really dry because you're going to be cutting after this. So here I'm taking my foundation. I used my NARS foundation, which is actually a bit too light for my skin tone, but I wanted it to be just because it is a Halloween look and I wanted my skin to be slightly paler than usual. So you can see I'm just completely covering up the whole latex and tissue paper part that I did. And I'm just taking that same RCMA no colour powder to set my entire face because I do get greasy and that's just what I would do usually. Now this part really does help if you have sharp scissors. I used my nail scissors and at the front they're quite blunt, so I was just mostly ripping the liquid latex, which I do not recommend. But also this part you want to be super careful. Like, you don't want to cut your own skin. Like, it looks like I'm cutting my own skin right now, but obviously it's just the tissue paper and liquid latex. But you want to be super careful that you're not going to be cutting your own skin because that's so dangerous. Like, you can see I'm able to cut it when it gets to the end of the knife where it's a bit more sharper. So I would just recommend being careful and make sure you got a sharpish knife. Here I'm just ripping it out so that when I put down the red now, you can actually see it because it just looks like the skin's peeling up. So here I'm just going to be adding some of that red cream colour that I showed you at the beginning of the video, and I'm using my tweezers so that I'm getting the red cream paint not on the other side of the cut, because you obviously don't want to put red blood type stuff on the wrong side of the cut. And I'm also going to be colouring the other side of the liquid latex, as you can see here, so that if it does peel up, you can see the other side is going to be red because it's not going to be white or clear. Here I'm just taking an even smaller detailed brush just to really get in there and make sure every single bit is covered with at least red so it isn't clear. And you've just got to keep going with this. Like, this part took me ages, like, I'm not even kidding, so long. I just used lots of different colours, like I used the bright red and the darker red and even black at some points. Now here, I thought it would be quite cool. I should have just left it as it is right there. Like, I should have just left it. But as you'll see later on, I just whited out my lips again because I feel like I went way too over the top with it. So yeah, I just kept going with different colours, and I'm making sure that I get the outside bits of skin because it's not going to be clear. It's going to look gory and disgusting. So now I'm taking that conjugated blood, which was absolutely disgusting. Like, you'll see in a minute that I'm actually finding it vile. Yeah, this is the part that I was talking about with my lips, that I just hated how much I went over the top, so I tried to get rid of it and it just didn't work. So I took my beauty blender and stamped it all out over again and then just did a tiny bit because I just thought it was a bit too much. So yeah, I'm taking the blood, which was disgusting, and I'm taking that on that detail brush again and putting it on the very edges, and it looks really real. Like, you can see I'm finding it absolutely disgusting. Like, look how disgusting that looks. I'm not the best at gore at the best of times, so this I found really disgusting to do, but it was worth it. It looked cool. So all I had to do was just keep going with the different parts of the blood and make it look more realistic. And I just make sure that you coat the little flappy bits because they're the bits that are going to be most covered in blood. Like, on the inside it is just going to be dark and red, but you want to make sure the edges get coated because that's the bit that's obviously like been cut by a knife, or like, you know, like the Joker's mouth is. Anyway, so here I'm going back to the glam bit. I'm using my Urban Decay Perversion mascara just to coat my eyelashes. And then I actually go back to my eyebrows because I thought they weren't as bold as I wanted them to be, so I just did them up a bit more. And then here I'm just adding on some Ardell lashes. I will link the ones that I used down below because I cannot remember for the life of me which ones they actually were. But I'm just putting them on because I thought it would be nice to have a bit of glam. I don't usually wear lashes, but for Halloween or something like that, I'm going to. So I just put them on and I thought it looked cool. So here I'm just going to be adding some finishing touches to the mouth bit. I took a cotton bud just so that I can dab it in a bit with different textures and just make it look a bit more interesting rather than just using a brush. Just adding final touches just to make sure I got the kind of effect that I wanted with the mouth. And here I'm just adding a tiny bit more onto my actual mouth just because I thought I grayed out a bit too much. And obviously the most important part of the glam bit, highlight. I'm using my Jouer highlight in Citrine and adding it to my cheeks, inner corner and some nose. My nose. So here's just some close-ups of my mouth, how it looked in the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and I will see you again very, very soon.